Yeah, I think so. One of the key factors about a self-contained kind of positive pressure climate cell automated indoor vertical farm, it's a bloody mouthful, isn't it? Is that with the genetics of the plants you're putting in, farmers don't have to worry about creating or using seeds that have genetics that are pest resistant, mold resistant, pesticide, fungicide resistant to all these chemicals and resistant to all these bugs and other crap that comes around. They don't have to worry about the genetics of the plant doing that. The genetics of the plant just have to grow like heck. That's it. It doesn't have to worry about defending itself from that stuff. So within these climate cells, it's fully automated. You don't have to go in there at all. They go in, they grow, they come out the other side, and there's positive pressure inside, so pumping CO2 in. And that positive pressure means that even when you open a door, if you have to go and do something for whatever reason, the air is pushing itself out, so nothing's going to go in.
So today we got Damien Stone up here on the Gold Coast of Australia, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about vertical farming and this vertical farming technology that's pivoting into the cannabis industry. Thanks for coming along today, Damien. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
With this vertical farming that you're putting into this industry, where did it start? Where do you come from? What's your background? And then just give us a kind of a background on yourself, and then how you see this technology entering into the cannabis industry.
Yeah, sure. So background about me, born in New Zealand, spent a lot of time working in marketing, advertising and branding, but particularly within fast-moving consumer goods, and then moved into consulting. The overarching synopsis of that, though, is very entrepreneurial type thinking. So within the agency, I was very much what they call an entrepreneur. So coming up with ways and means to help our customers create brands and businesses, and then wrapping that all up in a design and marketing bow and handing them over. I've had my own marketing company before as well, which went really well, sold that. Then I've had a number of other smaller businesses and a couple of big ones, some successful, some not so successful, but effectively been an entrepreneur now for a good 15 years. Where my philosophy sits is about a couple of areas, about taking an idea, taking it to market, commercializing it, and seeing where gaps are, and then effectively taking bits and pieces of things, putting them together and going, well, here's a solution for this part of the market. So the branding work and marketing work, for example, has been very much solution-based. So understanding what the core of a problem is and then designing a solution around it. So bringing different people together or different technologies together to solve a problem for somebody. So deep down, get a good understanding of a problem, and then, using my entrepreneurial brain and network and creative spirit, put together solutions. So yeah, I've had a few businesses. Like I said, some have been great, some not so great. Some got hammered by coronavirus. Some are still going quite nicely. And the idea around using vertical farming to do cannabis came about a little over a year ago now. A friend of mine's father is an avid user of CBD oil here in Australia, and he wanted to convert his farm. He's got 3,000 acres that he wanted to convert across to just to do hemp. But then, of course, he needs some help doing it because he's a farmer and he doesn't really know where to start. So myself and his daughter started looking at different ways to do it. And there's a whole bunch of issues that facing farmers, especially in Australia and in the US and other places, which is you can't control your environment. Yeah, you get a lot of free energy from the sun, but when you don't have any sun, or you have fires, or you have droughts, or you have pests, or you have mold, or you have every other thing, not being able to control your environment seems to make growing of hemp and cannabis very, very challenging. So I had a bit of a look, and a lot of people are getting, big crop losses, or outdoor farms are only able to cultivate once a year. Indoor farms seem to increase that, but then a lot of challenges with those as well. So the more we delved into, like the start of it was, how do we get my friend's father to grow 3,000 acres of hemp? And the more we delved into all the challenges that surround it, the more we realised, this industry is facing a lot of issues. You got security issues. I mean, one of the issues that this guy had is he's out of, hours and hours west of Sydney. How is he going to get people to work out there that can get security clearances? I mean, right now during COVID, normally horticulturalists rely on backpackers. There's no backpackers in Australia at the moment doing any of the agricultural or horticultural work that they normally do. So many challenges. And then I came across a lot of vertical farming solutions. That's kind of where I ended up with the way that we were going to be able to do it in a way that would be consistent, grow as quick as possible. Automated vertical farming would reduce the need for people involvement, which would reduce your input costs. You're able to basically almost be CO2 negative because you're going to pump CO2 into these things. So you're capturing CO2 and using it as a growth cycle. An indoor climate cell type style would capture a lot of the water that would be given off through transpiration and just normal operations. So your water recapture is a big one. To give you an example, you go to something like almond farming and they use something like 12 litres of water to make one almond. It's crazy. Whereas a really good indoor vertical farm that I've seen overseas, a lot of them will be able to recapture 99% of the water that's used, which is awesome. And the only time the water really leaves the building is when it goes out inside the plant. But then it comes down to how you dry it as well. But with things like in vertical farming, they're growing a lot of kale or leafy greens, and they're growing them a lot quicker than they would do outdoors and twice as fast. And by outdoors for these guys is, even in the greenhouse, they're growing twice as fast. So we then partnered with the company that we wanted to start adapting their vertical indoor farming, automated, to do cannabis. And that's really where it came from. Started off with the need of someone wanting to grow, get his own supply of CBD oil to grow 3,000 acres of hemp, to realising that was going to be a bit of a cluster, to then finding out what's going to be the most effective solution, and then looking out into the market saying, well, no one's actually really doing this, and why not? And so getting a better understanding of why people weren't using this type of system, to find out that, our partners have spent 10, 11 years working on the technology behind this. They are boffins. They are really, really clever. And no one seems to have invested that overseas that we can find.
Yeah. I've been around the industry a lot. I've walked into hundreds of different farms in the United States, seen all types of operations, from indoor lighting situations to greenhouses with light deprivation systems. You name it, everybody has their own way to grow this plant. But along with seeing that, I saw people go totally bankrupt trying to grow this plant because of how fickle it really is. It's very sensitive. There's a lot of issues with pests, which people have come up with different ways to combat that, with possibly other pests, different pesticides, which you run into a number of issues there as soon as regulation starts to come in, and they start to test for different compounds that are going to be in the plant, depending what jurisdiction you're in. And then all different types of stuff with mold and humidity issues and all that kind of stuff. So when I saw this product, it really solved a lot of those issues that the cannabis industry is currently facing. And so it piqued my interest just to see it. I haven't seen anything quite like it in the industry yet, but I think people will start to go that route.
Yeah, I think so. One of the key factors about a self-contained kind of positive pressure climate cell automated indoor vertical farm, it's a bloody mouthful, isn't it? Is that with the genetics of the plants you're putting in, farmers don't have to worry about creating or using seeds that have genetics that are pest resistant, mold resistant, pesticide, fungicide resistant to all these chemicals and resistant to all these bugs and other crap that comes around. They don't have to worry about the genetics of the plant doing that. The genetics of the plant just have to grow like heck. That's it. It doesn't have to worry about defending itself from that stuff. So within these climate cells, it's fully automated. You don't have to go in there at all. They go in, they grow, they come out the other side, and there's positive pressure inside, so pumping CO2 in. And that positive pressure means that even when you open a door, you have to go and do something for whatever reason, the air is pushing itself out, so nothing's going to go in. And positive pressure is a really good way. They do it now in ICU wards, as they have the positive pressure, negative pressure in some of them, where there's germs, for example, and they want to keep the germs in, they have negative pressure, so air is only ever going to go in. And where they want to keep germs out, so in ICU, it's positive pressure pushing out. So it's hospital grade in that respect. They use that technology. There's other things within contained environments that have to be taken into account as well, is thermal hotspots. So like you said, the plant's extraordinarily fickle, and if you've got a thermal hotspot in one part of your building, you're going to kill those plants. They're just not going to grow as well. You're not going to get that super consistent growth.
Well, that's what people, when they're setting up these facilities, they're trying to get this lighting correctly, the right heights of the lighting, the right temperature of that lighting. And then you're altering those lighting and those temperature conditions based upon, a lot of the time, especially if it's an indoor grow, an outdoor grow, or a greenhouse, you can't control all those things. So you're saying with this piece of machinery, they're actually climate controlled pods per se, or cells, that all temperature, humidity, everything is controlled within that cell.
Yeah, and you can run it off your phone if you need to. So rather than having 30 people running a greenhouse, you just have one person running this thing for 6 hours a week. Everything's automated. So it takes out a lot of that human risk factor. And with vertical farms, especially automated vertical farms, that's always what they're trying to strive for, is how do we take this particular process and remove the human from it. With this, it's about removing the human, but also removing any of the issues that may occur, that do occur within, even just in a greenhouse farm, or even just standard indoor farms. I mean, I've seen indoor farms for, kale and other things that, when you hear about it, you think, oh, it's super high tech, and then you go look at it, it's just a couple of shelving racks with some fluorescent bulbs. I thought this was supposed to be high tech.
Well, I think the industry, well, I guess agriculture in general, when they start to go vertical at all, it's just technically racking that goes up so that they can conserve space. But it's not technically an automated system, and I don't know if what constitutes one from the other. But so your piece of machinery, this piece of machinery actually automates that process, so you don't have as much labor intensity, actually hands-on people messing with it, because that's another issue within the industry, this whole security thing.
Yeah,
it is the processes and everything upon applications to whatever overarching regulatory authority that is there. They want to make sure that the processes in that facility they're not so many people touching it, and they want to see visibility on how that overall process works, Yeah.
So when we first started looking at this, it was very much about a security issue. So, you got 100, 200 people working in a warehouse, cultivating plants. Thank you. You have to, almost this full-time job for 2 or 3 people, signing them all off every day, entry, exit, make sure they're not carrying a couple of clippings in their pocket on the way out, sort of thing. Whereas for this, everything's trackable, traceable. It's all fully secure. The doors are locked. Yeah, 1 or 2 people as opposed to 30 or 40.
Well, yeah, that's another very good point. Not so, a little bit here in Australia, they're not as stringent on this medical side of the industry. On the medical side of the industry here in Australia, they want to know that there's some type of systems in place to track and trace the plant so it doesn't get out into the general public, you know, and nothing really goes missing. But in the United States, every state pretty much has an overall arching inventory management system that the state will actually buy. So the regulator will buy this system, and then the individual growers and retailers and stuff like that, they all have to plug into the system. So they can plug in a number of ways, or, you know, they could buy their own system, or they could use the system that the state provides. But it's used to track every plant from the seed to the sale. So they actually put a barcode on every plant that goes through this process. And they're just trying to ensure that nothing really goes astray, and that they want to collect their tax dollars at the end of the day is really what the governments are trying to do. But they also don't want it to get out into the general public, obviously, because it's a regulated product.
Yeah, that's it. The tax side of it's probably more important for them than anything. Many years ago, as part of the design work that I did a lot of work with the tobacco industry, and the tax take on that is phenomenal. It's probably 75 to 80% of the cost of a packet of cigarettes back then was all sorts of duties and taxes and GSTs and all sorts of stuff. And the comment around the traps then, and this is back in the early 2000s, was as soon as the government figures out a way to tax cannabis, they'll look at how they can legalise it. So, you know, there you go. And so this now with QR codes and, you know, lasers and scanners and all the rest of it, here we are, you know, 15 years later, and they're doing it. So our system easily adapts into that sort of stuff as well. So it's very much the software that runs it can be linked into those databases, either very smartly or very simply. Simple as uploading an Excel spreadsheet you pull out of the system. One of the things that we're trying to do is protect that system and keep it separate from the internet as such. That way it's not, you know, open to being hacked. The control over this is the most important part, is knowing that you're going to have 10,000 seedlings, you know, going in and 10,000 plants coming out, and they're all going to be exactly this high with very, very consistent yields, a whole lot. No pests, no mold or anything like that. So good quality control as well as inventory control.
Well, that's what I think the industry overall will eventually get there. I mean, it's going to take a little while, but definitely the medical side of the industry is going that route as far as trying to get their products to a pharmaceutical grade product, and they're going to want consistency through the supply chain. And then on more the recreational side, they will continue to go that route as well. They're gonna put in more regulation around the pesticides, the growing techniques. They will continue to go and have to meet these standards, you know, GACP, GMP standards. So I think all that will come about as the industry progresses. But you're saying that this product will assist them in that journey.
Yeah, it will. And the consistency of your output is also something that really appeals to me. So back when I did a lot of work with the beer and alcohol industry, you'd get licenses, for example, with Heineken. I think New Zealand was the first place to get a license to brew and bottle Heineken outside of the Netherlands at that stage. Or was it either Stella or Heineken? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Heineken. And the comment always was, it tastes a little bit different because, you know, your main ingredient is water. Everything else you can control, but your main ingredient there was water. But it always just tasted a little bit different. You couldn't quite get that water profile exactly the same as it was in the Netherlands. So with this thing, if you're going to create a recreational brand, let's call it Cannabis Heineken, for example, you can plant one of our machines in every single state in America and into Canada and produce exactly the same bud. Consistent. You know, one of the things about McDonald's, years ago I was doing a talk and they said, what makes McDonald's so successful? And I said, well, it's not necessarily that it does the best burgers where it is that I can go to any McDonald's store in Australia and get a Big Mac and know it's going to be exactly the same every single time, right? Whereas I can go to a local takeaway shop and it is a lottery of what I'm going to get. Is it a burger? Is it a kebab? Is it somewhere in between? I have no idea. Whereas the consistency is the addicting part, I think, of the experience. You just know exactly what you're going to get. I have Big Mac last right there. And then you become a creature of habit. So you become sticky to that product. So I guess one of the things from a recreational point of view when it comes to cannabis is that it's always a little bit of a lottery what you're going to get if you're buying it off the guy on the corner. But if you're buying it from a registered shop and it's got a brand name on it, and you know that if you're in Kansas, it's going to be the same as Colorado, the same as California, it creates that stickability around it. You get a consistent one. What it also does is that if you're a smoker of a particular product in Colorado from a recreational point of view, you're like, this gives me this high, and it gives me this, and it gives me this, and you give it a review. It's not just people in Colorado that can go to that particular shop and get it. Now everyone in America can go to their particular shop and get that particular brand. And that's where I see from a recreational point of view, the cannabis industry has an opportunity, or players within the cannabis industry have opportunities to create a nationwide brand that actually has a consistency right across. Word of mouth is the most powerful thing. And if you can create that consistent marijuana experience across every single state from a recreational point of view, you're going to take the market by storm. But the only way to do it is with a technology like what we've got, where it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if it's 50 degrees outside or 10 degrees outside or 100 degrees outside. It doesn't matter. It's the same consistent temperature inside, same consistent lighting, everything.
Yeah, I did a analysis on McDonald's when I was in college, and McDonald's was trying to figure out ways to differentiate themselves. And so the way that when you go into McDonald's and get a Coke, the reason that their Coke tastes so good rather than going to some other, vending machine Coke dispensing place is that they filter the water before it goes into the Coke machines.
Yeah.
And so that water is the key before it's mixed with the Coke additive that makes Coke so good at McDonald's. I think, consistency behind your product is definitely key at this day and age. And especially if you're starting to go across state lines or across country lines, you're going to have to provide a good quality product everywhere you go.
Yeah, there was a coffee company that did something similar. When I first moved to Australia, I went to Brisbane in 2008, and I found I can't remember what brand it was, but the quality of the coffee just varied greatly depending on which cafe you went to that served these particular beans. And a brand came in and basically said, we'll sell you coffee, but we're going to install a water filter into there because the tap water is just so inconsistently crap across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. It just tastes bad. And it was ruining people's coffee. It was one of the prime ingredients, right? So they installed these filters into the cafes that they put the beans into, and all of a sudden, coffee all of a sudden became a whole lot better. The same thing.
And I tell you, Australians take their coffee pretty seriously.
Yeah, they do, for sure. They do. But I'm from Wellington, where I don't know if you've been to Wellington and had a coffee there, but it's there's only one place I've been to in the world where the coffee's blown my head off more than, and that was in Vietnam, and that was one of those little drip coffee things. That was nuts. But Wellington coffee's up there with Melbourne coffee. It's really, really good. So now it's good here in Brisbane, Gold Coast, they take the coffee a lot more seriously and get a lot better cup out of it.
I can't believe how many cafes and different things are, that keeps those. I can't believe people keep those places employed. Even in COVID, I mean, people are still at the cafes and doing their thing. So I'm always surprised. We don't have that level of sit-down cafes and stuff like that in the States. It's more of a drip coffee situation.
Yeah, yeah. There's always a battle trying to find a coffee. When I've been to the US, going to a cafe, can I please have a flat white? They look at me like I've spoken Jamaican or something at them. No idea.
Yeah, they would have no clue. You love the froth milk here in Australia.
Yeah.
So we covered, labor issues are a major problem with the industry, especially on the cultivation side.
Yeah.
I've walked into a million places with all kinds of guys running around and trimming trees and moving pots from one place to the other. We've covered consistency of product, water issues, humidity, temperature control. How do you see, what's the future for you guys? Like,